Hey guys, let's start.
In times like these, being a citizen is a big job. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the virtues of self-rule and debate the state of our republic. Welcome to the Citizens Prerogative Podcast. This is the voice of your nerdy host, Michael Piscitelli, and we are all graced with the presence of a co-host whose passion for our republic precedes him wherever he goes. My dear friend, the lovely Raymond Wong Jr.
Thank you. I have a right to be here.
This is episode number 9, season 1. What right to work? You hear that often. We have states that are described as a right to work state, right to work policies, things like that. Title of this episode is What Right to Work? What is this right? Where does it come from? On the docket to try and travel this topic around, we're going to talk about having the right to work and that it doesn't feel very right-like. We also are going to talk about the future of work and the rise of competition within capitalism, or more to the point, a need for more competition within capitalism. We're also going to talk about the retirement myth and an idea that is much more worthy of our time. At least I would put it that way, and see what you think. With that, let's go ahead and get started. So Ray, this idea of having the right to work, pardon me, the first time I heard this phrase was after I moved to Arizona. And then I discovered that where I grew up in Connecticut was a much more union-centered environment, I would say, I guess, labor environment. Moving to Arizona, it's a right-to-work state, and there really aren't a significant presence of unions or anything like that. And I'm pretty sure right to work is framed in and around all of that. I don't know how much broader it goes, but even just with that definition and comparing it to our concept of a right, it really doesn't, they don't go along, they don't fit. So to me, the idea of the right to work sounds like some kind of branded propaganda.
Yes. I grew up in Arizona, so I was aware of the right to work status, and it always confused me because they spoke about right to work, and even in our education system, it's actually part of curriculum from what I recall.
No kidding.
We talk about the right to work. And it's interesting because I remember it being framed in a way that made it sound positive, but in my head, I couldn't understand it because it seemed like you could be fired and it was a preferable business environment for companies, right? And people were moving to Arizona. Companies were moving out of states like California or from the East where unions were more prevalent, and they were coming to Arizona. So it might have been an education in particular, but definitely within the justification for why so many people were coming to Arizona, it was quite common knowledge that it's our right to work status, which I think, again, is a nice way of saying a company can do whatever they want to you.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's framed in a way that it's
It was interesting. So I managed in Arizona. Okay. So it was interesting when you work for a multi-state corporation like I do or did, they you don't operate under the local laws, right? We didn't operate under Arizona's labor laws. We chose to go with the strictest labor laws within the company's footprint. So the company chose to follow California labor laws because they are the standard. They are the most robust and strict.
If you want to have an efficient workforce across geographies, you just
Right.
manage to the riskiest common denominator. And if those laws have the heaviest burden, as long as you're satisfying those laws, your whole company should be fine.
It's a great principle, but it was also strange for me as a manager, and there were people that would come from companies that were strictly Arizona local companies, and you could tell they had a much different idea about how they could be fired, and these companies would probably just tell them they could be fired if you do that. Whereas major corporations, which are subject to these laws, we have to kind of pull back that mentality. So anyone who worked for a small local Arizona company, or frankly a business, a local restaurant, the restaurants in all of those companies, they can just let you go because of the right to work status. So we would always say, oh, we do things different here because we're a national company.
It's interesting because actually the right to work is the exact opposite. It's the right to be fired.
Right.
Or the right to fire. And I position it against unions, and I have to come back to that because right to work, I think, is a reaction to over-unionization. Over-unionization, the way that unions may have become maybe too self-interested, lost sight of the long-term goals, the win-wins, whatever it was. And so then you could afford to hire many more people to do other menial jobs in these places, which means there were more jobs available. They weren't the same paying, or they didn't have the same type of insurance and things like that coming along with it. It kind of turned into a race to the bottom for labor, the right to work, but it was really the right to fire in so many cases. But it just meant, hey, you're a free agent. You can, go to this other place. Whereas I think it worked mythologically as propaganda, because one of the problems with unions, I would propose, I don't know them all, but when I think about the idea that, they just drive labor costs up, but they aren't necessarily encouraging people to grow skills, expand, move on, do whatever, right? And at the same time, they were not thinking longer term about all the people who would need to work. There's almost a greed mentality to a certain degree that happens with unions. They become a little too short-sighted, I think, as organizations. Not to say that they haven't accomplished great things and serve a great beneficial cause, but the problem is the way we do all of these things tends to get all mucked up by money in so many ways. And this right to work idea just keeps unions out, period. And if we were able to organize better in ways that were maybe I don't know, more considerate for both sides. I have no idea. I don't want to go into unions.
I think you get into what you're trying to. The problem is it's the whole room where it happened issue, right? Like, deals are made. There are things going on in a room where we're not having complete transparency, and I think that's what Citizens Prerogative kind of our focus is that we believe that transparency is the means to produce the best outcome, right? Anything done in secret, anything done in closed doors. So these unions, did they become self-interested? Now, we really want people to help weigh in on right to work, because right to work is it's slightly complicated. I think in a lot of ways it's meant to weaken the unions, but in fact it causes them to not even, they don't even want to operate here, right? Because people can just,
but it doesn't help us. I mean, it ends up being a race to the bottom too, right? It's almost like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I guess, the way the phrase goes.
So there's no protections, right? This right to work. So what I would like to hear more about is what are the positive sides of right to work? Because for me, my research hasn't shown a positive upside to it, just that unions are controlled, which can weaken collective bargaining. But again, is collective bargaining the way to go? I'm not sure.
Yeah. And right to work is maybe like you can work here without joining a union. It's like, because it becomes its own power structure in a way. And I don't know that the workers are always at the center, although ideally they would be, right? And then, yeah, right to work to me is just, well, you know what? Let's just laissez-faire it. Let's just take all the constraints off of things. It's like, if it's a good company, people would want to work there, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how they think the market's gonna work there for workers, but let's move on. One of the things we wanted to establish with this is that the right to work is not a right. The right to unionize, that is. Maybe not a bill in the Bill of Rights per se, but the National Labor Relations Association, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know all the details there, but it's in the law, where workers are protected to be able to unionize. It's undesirable to companies. And I would argue that long term, it's proven to be undesirable to workers. I mean, you let it run its course, and then you get these trade agreements, and it destabilizes everything. You have to be cost conscious. You know what? People at the bottom, it doesn't work out any better for us when we get greedy than it does for the people at the top necessarily. It's just their problems are different. They're not hungry. At least they're not hungry for food. They're probably sad and hungry for something else, whatever they can't have. But long story short, I digress. Point is, the right to work is not a right. Actually, work should be a choice. That's my opinion.
And unions served. They're old. Like, everything needs a nice revamp. Our system of government right now, the party system, and in particular these unions, because I think the problem with unions is that they were created at a time when they were fighting the barons, and there were not laws that protected the individual worker. There are federal level laws now that have general protections, and coming from a management background as well, I struggle to see how a union official being involved in those conversations has any benefit, right? To me, it just seems like expense. It seems like bureaucracy. It seems like it gets in the way of business. So I understand where we came from as corporate America, right? But there are standards now. And if your company's that bad that you have to unionize, why are you even part of that company? I suppose it's to change it for the better, right? I guess we could lean on Amazon employees as a good example.
Let me push back, because
Please.
Unions work well to uplift an atrocious environment. A really unequal, atrocious, dangerous, like the most abhorrent. It's always been there to bring up the bottom. We need it. We still need all of that to happen, like for farm workers, for instance. They've been able to unionize, but the force there isn't as strong as it might have been, like back when the auto workers established themselves a long time ago.
Right.
Point being this: if you had a union, look at your company, look at any company you're working in, anybody out there, right? If you aren't in a union, then imagine for a moment you had one. If you had one at your job, you're an accountant, you joined the accountants union, you're an accountant for XYZ company. As a member of that union, they've negotiated, you only pay this much for healthcare. You get this much in your retirement account. It's not what the company chose to give you a cut of, it's what was negotiated by this other group who has more interest in you doing better. And that works well to a point. Like you said, if it's poorly managed, or the benefits aren't good enough, and they're not attracting people in the competitive market, then it's different. But so there's something there. It's a check, it's a balance. It's trying to achieve an equilibrium. Again, if it's not done well, it gets unbalanced, and not good things happen. Let's talk about the future of work. And before we get into that, a message from our sponsor. Fulfilling a dream where all possess an intrinsic love for self-rule that is reciprocated with equal justice under the law. Citizen Do-Good values all of the amendments of the Constitution, along with the original core documents. It forms a framework and operating manual for the Republic. The time is now to deeply re-examine the current implementation of our system. We are a proud sponsor of Citizens Prerogative, a major partner in spreading the good word about civic love and the power of change for us all. Check out citizendogood.com, where you can join our newsletter, support our efforts through Patreon, or shop our wares. Thank you. Moving along, let's talk a little bit about the future of work and what I like to call the rise of competition within capitalism. So, thinking about the future of work, automation is coming. The jobs we have now won't be the jobs people have in the future. Who knows at what rate people are going to get transitioned out, but just assume every job at some point can be automated. There's technology on the verge of every cutting edge. If you're in management, that's ripe for machine learning, AI, algorithms, but the next level, not what's here today. All of middleman, any kind of coaching or feedback type of things, development frameworks. A lot of those things are going to get automated. It's not just driving cars. It's not just flying planes. It's not just accounting or some of those, more potentially repetitive activities that can get automated. There's some higher level thinking type stuff potentially, and behavioral type stuff, interacting with people, and AI. Well, I'm saying it now. We'll see if it's true in the future. But theoretically, an AI manager shouldn't sexually harass you. Probably isn't interested in cutting your paycheck because they need more vacation money or something. Like, I don't know what's going on out there that's shady. I think there's probably a lot of stuff, but chances are a computer is not going to have those same motivations to treat you that way. It's probably going to be programmed to help improve your skills.
It was shocking that you said that, because I happen to be in the management profession. And so you are speaking about my job there and the competition that will be created for me. But I think you made a good point, is that the things you said don't really happen, I think, too often, thankfully, in the world. But what does happen is an imbalance of treatment from employee to employee, right? So as you have an organization with 300,000 employees, okay, that equals how many thousands of managers, right, to manage all of that. There is no way every single manager is going to stay on the same page in regards to employee relations and HR management routines. So basic metrics, performance metrics, and attendance, etc., right? So I didn't even think about it, but if you can systematically, it's that easy, right? Oh, you called out, it's this simple, right?
How much policy gets coached on, people get coached on right now?
Right. How many errors do we make? How many times do HR departments say, oops, you didn't follow the ABCs of management, so you can't fire that person, even though you just told them they're fired, they're not fired, right? So this is the conundrum that companies are in, and I didn't realize it, but by just moving maybe the manager up a level and having that systematic management, you kind of you solve a lot of those personnel issues, right?
And you're getting great canned reports on them and their performance and their progress
from the AI,
the interface.
Here's how they're performing.
Once a quarter, maybe twice a year, you meet individually with them, because there's a lot. So you got to do it all year long. One meeting.
Well, because you probably have a large number of employees, right? You probably have the AI,
the
and then you have
is huge.
I didn't even so that increases efficiency, and managers become.
We have to be scientists. We aren't driving cars. We aren't.
Right.
What are we doing? We're sitting at home printing guns. I don't know. Something doesn't jive. So the point is this, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, whatever we do today, we won't be doing tomorrow, one way or another, whether it's existentially not doing this or still alive doing something else, hopefully something better.
You're absolutely right, Michael. And I was even on a conference call earlier in my day job when I'm not in this super character of a political activist, when I'm just doing a normal job. And I told everyone, I said, if you are not developing a future skill, if you are not developing any new skill right now, you are at risk of being left behind by this economy. You must be developing an AI skill, some sort
Yes.
of understanding. For me, I've done a lot of AI implementation already, so I understand framework. I'm an architect. I always say that, so that way if the job finally comes due, they'll be like, Ray said he was an architect. So it's
Plant those seeds.
you got to, right? But
Yeah.
but that's the challenge of the new economy. And I'm telling you right now, Michael, I think that the song for the automation it's going to be one way or another. I'm gonna get you. You know what I mean? Like it's coming. It's coming.
One way or another, they're gonna get you.
They'll get you. They'll get you.
They'll get you. These boots will keep on walking.
Okay, now you took us
Anyway,
to Sinatra.
I did, sorry.
You took us. Hey, wait, is that the same singer?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I sure hope
put
so, for
way
your
too
sake.
much
That's
faith.
the only saving grace you'll have in this one. But that might be our opening, right? Let us know what you think, audience. Like, should that be our new opening? It's the we're on the chase. Maybe actually anytime we do automation. But I digress. Like I'm doing that as well.
Future of work. So it's definitely something else. And like you said, Ray, I think it can't be emphasized enough. Learning is lifelong. Skills constantly need to be tuned, developed, changed. Be investing in yourself. That's very important. Things are changing, and they're changing more quickly every day, one way or another. So silver lining, let's talk a little bit about this. The economy is pent up. We have assets and resources pent up among billionaires, among these massive companies of companies within companies. There's just right now, there's a huge amount of resources pent up for some change. It would be nice for it to be very positive for all of us. So, the capacity is there. And what's really important is that everybody gets a chance to participate. So when you look at history, you look at the swings of history, and you talk about monopoly power and antitrust and all that stuff. And we've maybe heard a little bit of that rumbling, but ultimately, I think the economy is going to prove to be too dynamic with climate change, with green energy policies, with technology, that it won't matter. Like, I think everything will just stay kind of destabilized, and we're going to be moving into the new era yesterday. With that said, it would be nice if more people were positioned for entrepreneurship. It would be nice if there were more smaller companies coming out of this. I would like to see a great Cambrian explosion of businesses, of science studies, of maybe just studios of people getting together to study novel problems. Like, think about all of the free brain capacity that's going to be opened up when people aren't driving for a living, when they aren't programming necessarily. A lot of people will still be programming at a different level, but whatever it is that we were doing that we want to be doing tomorrow, let's think about what that is and make sure we're creating the opportunities for that as well. I think there's a way to democratize work by having lots of solar companies, whatever it is, lots of those companies. Yes, there's redundancy. Before we get on this, redundancy is really only good for one owner of a business or whatever, or one company to become efficient. It's good for an individual cell. It's good for an individual thing. But as a whole organism, as our economy or as our society, it's really important for us to have competition, because that's the way we've structured it, right? Competition within markets. We all play by the same rules. And everybody gets an opportunity to kind of operate in that space. The jobs exist across multiple companies. Different people get to take their spin on their brands and their values and their missions. And I just see everybody trying to pursue their happiness, whether it be in business or other endeavors, freely, because we don't have to do all this menial work.
Take it from, and we won't, right? We won't have to do the menial work. Robotics will continue to rise, trash pickup, that sort of thing. Things that we've really counted on humans to do will no longer be necessary. It's just,
we don't want to become Wall-E, but that's kind of the road we're on.
Well, the question is, we are on our way to Wall-E. We're all fully headed towards a Wall-E situation, but I think that we have to. This is kind of the pullback, right? Like, this is the point where America needs to decide if we are really going to evolve for the better or for the worse. If we continue to fall into corporate machine, we will turn it. That's what I think Wall-E actually had a very deep message about consumerism and large corporation, because by and large was the corporation. They were also the president of the planet, and they owned everything, right? So all the shops. And so I think what it was trying to also indicate is that we have to make sure that we don't let corporation and consumerism take over, which is funny from a Disney corporation, but we can't let them, this monopoly or this idea of control. Frankly, some of these ideals that the right wing is pushing, right? That you subscribe to whatever we say. There was even a part where in that movie they're educating the children, right? And it's the robots like, by and large, your very best friend. Like, so we're doing that today, like in curriculum. In curriculum, we do that all the time, like saying that slavery wasn't a big deal and they had barbecues. It's the same thing. It's manipulating the children.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between, think about what we really want to spend our time on. We get 80 years roughly, give or take, on this earth. We don't want to be hungry. We don't want to, be ignorant. We want to be able to pursue happiness. These are really basic, fundamental human things. A lot of them aren't wants. They're kind of, what was it, Maslow, whatever the hierarchy of needs is. We have the means to take care of the needs so that we can be free to pursue whatever it is. I mean, imagine we would be on a starship by now if everybody who had the capacity, inclination, and interest to be a scientist or an inventor was free to be able to pursue that. And if they failed, they weren't out on the street hungry and poor, because they probably had another great invention. Like, as an inventor, you have to be able to fail. What a terrible thing that most humans who have the capacity to do it just don't start with the proper means. Oh, and then the right to work. Well, you can go work your way up. Yeah, go ahead. Climb somebody else's ladder.
Well, that ladder is a falsehood, right? Because the right to work does not necessarily mean you will be successful. And unfortunately, the right to work is enabled by wealth. So you have to be part of the connected families. You have to be part of that network. And sure, people can claw their way up tooth and nail, but that is a fraction of who is making it into the C-suite. The people that are at the top were the people that were always at the top. Their fathers, their uncles,
it's who they know,
their grandparents. It's all the network.
Yeah, or who they've invited in or gotten to know, or, it's just...
And the union doesn't even fix that. So that's why we advocate we need to look at all of this, because the union just collective bargains with those people in power, and really the union should be enabling everyone mobility throughout the company.
Yeah, I don't think they rose. You're right. They didn't rise to the full vision of what they could be as an institution.
Right.
They've been nipping at the heels, and then it just devolves. I'm thinking now about Germany because, and please keep me honest, anybody out there, I didn't research this part ahead of it, but there's a couple of things about the way Germany was structured. And, I'm talking about Germany and the way it was structured on our type of Republican, system, with democracy built in it, for voting and whatnot. but the way they organize their economy is a little different, naturally. And one of the aspects, I believe, in their corporate structures, and I don't know how all of their corporate laws are, but my understanding is that when you incorporate, a part of your board is required to be some amount of representation of workers on the board, making decisions on behalf of the company. And the CEO, everybody who works for a company basically works for the board, right? The board is the oversight body. And so when you start adding workers to the oversight body of a corporation, wow, you just created a check, a balance. It's very simple, clean, elegant, and it's keeping the interest of the company and in line with the interest of the people who work there. It's not a cooperative, right? It's not a collective. It's still a corporation.
You bring up Germany, and I'm glad you do, because I can't speak to them because I don't have the facts in front of me right here. But Germany had some of the most aggressive pandemic response to secure the economy and secure their people. Very generous, from what I understand, and continues to be the best model of how to keep your economy running. And I think that they've come out of this thing not completely unscathed, but looking better than a lot of us. Germany also has a lot of common sense laws like that. One I really like is on the Autobahn. Of course, because you're truly free, you get to speed as fast as reasonable. But if you do get a ticket in Germany, it's based on your income. So when you receive a speeding ticket, it's not based on the speed or anything. It's based on your income, which is so smart to me, right? Like,
you should feel the pain of breaking the law.
Right. And that's the problem. And that's one of the citizen prerogative issues we have out there, team, is that
that's
folks,
equality. That's equality under the law.
Right.
Equal pain from a fine.
Because if you can't afford that $200 ticket,
why do you care about the law?
It destroys. Yeah, if you could just, it's a drop in a hat, right? No, Mr. Bezos, your ticket will be $2 million.
$2 million.
And that's probably being generous. And and just imagine what we can do with that $2 million.
Oh gosh, so funny. And true. I mean, I only laugh maybe so I don't cry, but this is the system. And I feel I'm ingratiated because I have the opportunity to sit here and think these thoughts and to talk about them with you. It's a luxury, and I don't take it lightly. I mean, we've worked hard to be able to just sit here and have this conversation in this way.
Right.
My goodness. We ain't young. We ain't spring chickens.
No, we've been, but I mean, I think it's thinking about the future, right? I don't think we ever thought that. We said it a lot that we wouldn't end in banking. I mean, I was always okay with it, but you would say, but we're not going to die in banking. And I used to say, oh yeah, sure, I agree. But I was happy to. But I think that now it's, back then we had no idea about the automation that's coming, and now the writing's on the wall. So
or the world we lived in. I mean, we were probably a little more idealistic in certain ways, I'm sure, than we are now. Too much real stuff has happened. I mean, not that fake stuff happened before, but you know what I mean.
But we're still trying to be creative. We're still trying to keep that spark alive. And that's why we appreciate those of you that have joined us, those of you that are leaning into the conversation. And I appreciate you, Mike, because, I think if we had given up all of our hopes and dreams, we couldn't have these types of conversations. And I listened to other shows and I listened to other organizations, and they all seem to be living in very dark places. And I would like to think, and our listeners keep us straight here, but we're trying to not only be thoughtful and real, but also we believe there is a better way, and we believe it's achievable, and we are trying to inspire, not depress. So of course, when you join us in the conversation in season 2, we hope to have more of you. Maybe you'll come on and tell me we depressed you, and we're going to work on that together.
More jokes, more giggles, more girly giggles.
But the truth is hurts. This episode, unfortunately, folks, we kind of talked about it for quite some time before we put it on. There's just no good way to say it. Your jobs are at risk. Your lives are at risk. Everybody in America now, the way that this works, I think you said it in a previous episode, maybe just last episode, Mike, was the small business, right?
Your audio is out.
Hello?
Hello. I think it was in this episode that I was talking about small business. It was between episodes.
Oh. So then if it was this, so between episodes then, well, yeah. So then I think that experience is going to matter more than product as time goes on. Experience
And
knowledge and nourishment of the human experience, and the understanding that maybe there is an afterlife, but as long as you're here, you might as well have the most fulfilling experience possible. And thank goodness the founding fathers put those simple words in it. We talk about that a lot. I bring it up all the time. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That's
those
the point.
words are going to help us a lot. And those words are
those are the requirements. I consider that the BRD, or the project definition document for this whole thing.
Can you expand on that, please, Banker?
I mean, I think that was
the BRD?
Sorry, a business requirements document. It's a need. We're saying, you know what? As an organization of people, we have a need for a better life. We want to build something that enables us to pursue happiness, and then come on as an answer, a solution, a tool, a product, a system, the government, the republic to answer that need from the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence was said, this is what we deserve. This is who we are. This is what we deserve and why we deserve it. And we're going to have it. And then we made it happen subsequent constitutions later. We implemented it, and now we get to make it better, and we need to make it way better, and we can. We've proven all the parts. We've tested so many components. Now we can just reconfigure it. Forget sliced bread. Let's build bigger and better. So with that in mind, let's talk about the myth of the retirement and what would be better. What would be better is doing what you want to do until you die. That's the best thing. Like, to be serving a purpose. That is the innate driver in humans. It's not to get a paycheck. A paycheck doesn't motivate humans. It hasn't been around that long. The money, the money also hasn't been around that long. That's not really what's motivating the humans. It's what they get with it from it. It's a transaction, right? It's what comes next. It's not for the paycheck. It's not for the dollar. It's for what those things can bring. That's where the fulfillment is. So we just created those systems, right? And now we get to change them. And there's so many things that would be better than what we have. And a lot of them, we use the tools we have to build the bridge to that future, and we can do it. The retirement myth was born, out of this relationship with back in the day when companies took care of their workers and realized workers with paychecks bought things. That was a relationship. That was a contract, social contract. It was a bond. And not only that, we would give you a pension, right? You would give us your hard labor. We all get 80 years. My 80 years are going to be up in the bell tower watching you while you build all my cars and make me rich. We both get 80 years, but mine are going to be different than yours, okay? And here's a little bit something to make it okay. I'm going to give you an account that's going to take care of you when you can stop working, because you're going to be tired and beat up at some point. And I recognize that because I'm also a human. And here's our contract, okay? That's where retirement came from. I don't want to be beat up and tired and old. And then what do I do? I just want to love what I do and do it until I die. I think everyone wants to do that.
What is the point of this retirement other than to a company to say you are no longer as valuable and here is a system for relieving you of your duties. In fact, we should always have some sort of system in place to make sure if you want to live your best life and you don't want the 4-bedroom house and you don't want an acre of land, you just want a small place to sleep at night and you want to go out and be a street artist, like, we should enable that. And they should be able to live their best life till their dying day. And the thing is, that person who would have maybe wanted to do that, by the time they've hit that age, their back is out. They can't bend over, right? They can't go down on their knees because they can't get back up. And why? Because a company has squeezed everything they could out of you. But what if you had the choice? What if, as the people, we could say, you know what? I've enjoyed working for the last 10 years. I'm going to take a small break because my freedom and my pursuit of happiness relies on it. And we should all say, good on you. It's an American dream. Live the way you want to live as long as you don't impact others in this shared prosperity. Not redistribution. We talk about it a lot. Citizens Prerogative advocates that there is a baseline, a livable amount of money that is reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, and the idea of redistribution is just like the right to work. Redistribution just indicates how big the problem is, because if you have an imbalance, that means the system's not working to begin with. The distribution was wrong at the start, right? I mean, you can't say, oh, we can't do redistribution. Well, then how about we just fix the distribution problem? How about we fix the equality part of the equation, the part of the contract that's been broken with these people where there's bottomless greed? How many people have to starve? It's a very wonky, off, lopsided place to be.
And I just want to say that if you don't think this relationship can get worse, okay, this right to work situation and such, in some countries, you have to submit a picture with your resume, right? In some countries, they actually work on your physical appearance to make a decision about your ability to work. So
They do that in our country too.
To a degree, right?
Who doesn't have a Zoom? Who doesn't have a Zoom interview nowadays?
Yeah, it's true, right? Like there really should be blinders on and blind justice.
That's a whole other hiring and all. That's another.
That's a whole other story. But in that sense, though, you think about what right to work. There is no right to work. No. It is a system of hoops that you have to jump through, and the management has jumped through those hoops, and everybody has joined the game, and everyone says, welcome to the game, start to jump. And that's what we're asking is that right? Why can't we decide the game? Put the game back in our hands so employers know. Just imagine if the employer knew that you could just leave at will because you really don't need this. I guarantee employers will start treating you better once they know the citizenship can just turn around and walk out the door and be completely fine.
Yeah, the playing field is not level. The rules are rigged, but even if the rules were a level playing field, do we have the proper type of enforcement? Are we comfortable with it? I don't know about any of that. I don't think that's in place. But I want to leave people, we're going to have to wrap this up, and I want to leave people just thinking about the fact that don't plan to retire ... Make sure you're thinking about what you want to be doing for the rest of your life. I think that's critical, and I don't think it's something enough people do. And whether or not it makes a living or it can return some income to you later in life, so be it. But I think everybody should be thinking about that, because the current environment or the structures that we've put in place to care for workers long term are not viable. And so for the moment, everyone's going to need to figure out what's going on for themselves. So think about that. And then in the meantime, thinking about what we're going to be talking about. which is better ways to do this, other things we can be doing. You mentioned the floor, right? I just want to come back to that before we wrap, because I think that's just one example of a stepping stone that's right before us, right? It hooks into Andrew Yang and a lot of other people. I read a book called The Fair Shot, and I apologize, the author escapes my memory in the moment, but he was one of the founders of Facebook, I believe. And he went and looked into philanthropy quite a bit. Long story short, this basic income idea is huge for us to just install floor for the time being. People are suffering. It's a very difficult time. I think the pandemic is, in so many ways is showing the weaknesses of the current implementation. So if we take a step back, we can put in a floor. People who need money get money. People solve the problems in their lives themselves the best. No program solves it for them better than they do. Give people a little money, they will solve their problems and figure it out. Give homeless people a home, they're no longer homeless, and then they figure out how to continue that rolling forward and remain housed. There's so many examples of this, not anecdotally, but scientific study information about this and, the effects of these things. So at the end of the day, we're hung up on people getting free money, and we will talk about why that myth has been perpetrated. But what's more important is looking at the positive side and the reciprocal feedback loop. If the relationship between labor and capital or workers and their management is broken, lopsided, we have inequality, then take it out of the hands. That relationship is sour. Maybe we need a little bit of a divorce, give people money outside of that structure. You will support the economy. We see it with stimulus, right? All of these COVID checks now that have been hung up, if they were coming out on a regular basis, we would have established a floor of economic activity. What happens when you give people money who need money? It gets spent. Where does it get spent? In our economy. It establishes a floor of economic activity. It establishes a floor for poverty, below which people should not be able to fall. It's a win-win system.
I don't know how people can drive down the street and see homeless individuals and not have your heart just drop out. It's tough to me, and I want to help people, but I think all of us have that sense of helplessness where if you help one individual, there's five more down the road waiting for a handout, right? This is a problem that cannot be solved at the individual level. This is an institutional problem, and homelessness in the supposedly greatest nation in the world is unacceptable. And the American people are too focused on judging a person for being homeless and not focusing on how they became homeless in the first place. We are obsessed with categorization. We're obsessed with being retired. We're obsessed with being homeless. In that sense, when you categorize a person as homeless, you dehumanize them. And really, you need to ask yourself, not if a person is homeless, but how. Why? How did this happen in our country?
What is it? Oprah says, it's not what's wrong with that person. And she was quoting somebody else, maybe. But it's not what's wrong with that person. It's what happened to that person.
That's
What
right.
environment, right, attributed to that? What conditions? And I'm not saying that people don't have the capacity to fall. Of course, we all do. But how far does it make sense to fall? I mean, so many of us could at any point in time be precariously close to that edge. And sometimes it's an abyss rather than a floor. And that's not fair. And a lot of people will never even come close to understanding what it's like. It just doesn't make sense. I think we're going to wrap up there For more information on this and other episodes, head over to citizendogood.com and click on podcast. While you're there, register to log in and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from the community. We have been your hosts. Thank you, Mr. Raymond Wong Jr.
And thank you, Mr. Piscitelli. This has truly been a retirement of retirement.
It's been something, that's for sure. And I suspect we're going to be probably coming back to this very soon.
Because I'm not done talking about it. I'm angry. I'm ready to stop retiring and start living.
Thank you to our listeners. We saved the best for last. You are the best and have been for years. Thank you for your support. We know it's painful and we love you. Intro music sampled from OK Class by Ozzy Jock under Creative Commons license through freemusicarchive.org. Other music provided royalty-free through Festlane Studios, Inc.